So you can see my slides, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now question. So what we are discussing, the different type of strain gauges. So we discuss about the unbonded metal wire and then bonded metal wire and then bonded metal foil, which I said is very important. Bonded metal foil. Um, in this case, mostly it is very widely used today, and there are very thin wires. It is not actually wires. It is made of the etching process, and it is just like a sellotape, and you can take this one and paste it on the top of the surface where you want to measure the strain. So and then you have two terminals where you need to connect it with the Wheatstone bridge, and then some current will pass through it, and then accordingly resistance will change, the output will change. You will measure the output, and accordingly it will be converted to strain. So this is the way. So now again, if we continue, so few things I was discussing which I didn't stop. The point is that strain is not a scalar quantity. Okay, when you mention a strain, there are two things. One thing is that at which point you are mentioning the strain, that is important. The next important thing is that which direction your strain is acting. So these two things are very important. But the way I discuss, I never mentioned about it. Okay. So now let's discuss on it. So in stress strain analysis, the goal is to measure the stress or strain, whatever, at some geometrical point, right? So so you have to implant the strain gauge in what geometrical point you want to measure. At that point, you have to paste the strain gauge. Now there are few things. So particularly pinpointing at that point is not possible because the strain gauge with the fine grids have some finite area. So it is not point. So thus you have to paste this strain gauge around this point where the point will be in the middle of the gauge, and whatever strain you will receive, that will be the average value of the strain on the surface. Okay, so if strain gradient is linear, then from this average value you can find out the midpoint, and then you can kind of manipulate what the strain it could be based on the gauge length. And if it is not, then the point at which gauge you want to measure, you apply the strain gauge around it. That means keeping that point in the middle, and you will measure the average values of the strain. And if you think about that, it's a small point, and the strain gauge is quite small, kind of few inches, 2-3 inches, even small. So this error you can think it is a negligible. This is the first thing. The next thing is that uh, whatever gauge factor I was discussing, the gauge factor will be supplied with the strain gauge from wherever you will buy that, the manufacturer will supply, and that will be pretty accurate. Now the next point, what I was trying to see, that the direction of the strain. So whenever you say that there is a strain, it is not a scalar quantity, so it is a direction. So whenever you apply some strain gauge, which direction the strain it is measuring, that is first very important to know. Then we need to know that, so based on the direction, how we can orient the strain gauge to measure the strain at that particular direction. So these two things are important. Now first try to understand. Suppose we have a left hand most figure. So metal foil strain gauge. Suppose now think about that. Suppose we are applying the strain, whatever the direction it is mentioned. So if we apply the strain, whatever the direction is mentioned or the force, then what will happen? The wire will try to elongate only the dotted, only the black portion, this much will try to elongate. So wire elongation of wire will not be too much. So the change in resistance will be very, very less. So in this direction, we cannot measure the strain. Next, come to the next figure that I am pointing with the mouse. So if you see these two direction, if we apply, or these two direction we can apply, but which direction we will get the strain? So if we apply in these two direction, what will happen? You see the elongation of the wire will be very very small because the initial length will be only this joint portion. Now instead of that, if we apply in the horizontal way the force, what will happen? All the wires are long in this and all the wires will be elongated with this force and you will get more elongation. So if you want to measure the strain along the horizon, you have to paste the strain gauge like this so that your strain long wires will be on the direction of the force. Then only these wires will elongate and change in resistance you will see. Okay. So if you proceed with that, so it is important to which direction you want to measure. So now suppose I give you one surface where strain is acting and I tell you I am not thinking about the volume. Now I am giving you a surface strain. Now I tell you that can you determine the strain and which direction it is acting? Different way of asking this question is can you determine the strain in the x direction, y direction as well as maybe in the xy trans direction. So, so the question answer is yes, you can, but definitely with a single strain gauge, you cannot measure the strain in three directions because a strain gauge can only measure a single direction, strain along a single direction. Which direction? The way you implant the strain gauge where the long wires are placed. So, for example, in the first figure, left hand figure, the direction of y it can measure the strain but direction of x it cannot measure. So to measure strain on a surface both in the xy and xy direction, so basically you know from the first year mechanics the strain will consist of a strain matrix. For a surface it will be a kind of 2 cross 2 matrix, and then for volume it will be a tensor and so on. So in surface you need to have x direction, y direction and xy direction. So in addition to single element strain gauge or in addition to a single strain gauge, combination of gauges are required. Combination of gauge is required to measure the strain in different direction on surface or volume. So those combination of gauge is called the Rossetti. Rocattees. Those combination of strain gauge are called the Rossetti. Roaccette. So this Rossetti is required when you are trying to measure the strain in different directions. Okay. So accordingly, you have to place the strain. Okay, and then you have to do the strain analysis. Rossetti structure in strain gauge is commonly used to solve the problem of surface strain where the magnitude and direction are totally unknown. So theoretically, this gauge Rossetti will be allowed to calculation of all the desired information. So if you see that right hand side figure here, okay, so we have pasted three strain gauges on a single point. So if you see this strain gauge, so it can measure the strain on x direction. If you think about this strain gauge, it can measure the strain on y direction. If you see this strain gauge, you can measure the strain on xy direction. So if you implant these three strain gauge on a single point, and then for each strain gauge you have a Houston bridge. From the Houston bridge, each strain gauge you are getting output. From the output you will know the strain in each direction. So if you can use this kind of structure which is called the Rossetti structure, so with the help of that, you can determine the strain in the x-axis, you can determine the strain in the y-axis, and you can determine the strain on xy. That means trans direction. And accordingly, you can find out the strain matrix. Similar way you could do when you are going with the volume. So this kind of structure is called the Rossetti structure. Now suppose if you want to measure the strain on x and y direction, not the trans direction strain. So then what you can do, just only X and Y, you can paste the two strain and the this oblique strain gauge you don't paste, and then you have two output from the Wheatstone bridge. From the two output of the Wheatstone bridge, you can easily determine the strain in the X direction and Y direction. So Rossetti structure is very important so that you can determine the strain, magnitude as well as direction uh, in any surface or any volume. Okay. So now tell me if you have any query on the Rossetti structure. If you have any query. Okay, nobody is asking, so maybe all of you understood. If you want to me to explain, okay. So no, sir. Okay, no query. Okay. So if you want me to explain once more Rossetti structure, I can do it. If you don't understand, but as none of you is asking, so what we can do, we can proceed to next subsection. So the next point is the temperature compensation, which is also very important factor. So temperature compensation of the strain gauge, which is very important factor. So let's try to understand why do we need a temperature compensation. So temperature is an, as we discussed earlier in the first chapter, temperature is an important interfering input for strain gauges. Why? Why temperature is an important interfering input for strain gauges? Temperature is an important interfering input for strain gauges because if the temperature, the resistance changes. As we are discussing with the strain, the resistance changes, and that is measured with the Wheatstone bridge, and accordingly the strain we can determine. With the temperature also the resistance changes. So suppose we have a strain gauge and there is no strain, so but resistance is not changing due to strain, but let's say the temperature changes. So then what happens? The resistance will change and accordingly you will get output and you will tell that the some strain is acting, which is wrong. So temperature is an interfering input for strain gauge and it is very annoying. So we need to do something so that the temperature effect can be nullified. Okay. Since strain induces the resistance change are quite small, also the temperature effect, also resistance changes. So it will affect in a major way to the measurement of the strain. So the temperature effect can be compensated using dummy strain gauge. What is that dummy strain gauge? That you need to know. So you remember to eliminate the temperature effect, we use the dummy strain gauge. So now let's see, we have the two specimen in the figure. In the left hand side, this this is the actual specimen where we want to measure the strain, and we see that the load is acting, and you see the strain gauge orientation where the strain gauge is oriented with the load so that it can measure the strain in that direction. Now we use a dummy strain gauge. Okay, that means the same material which is made up of load, and but there is no strain in it, and we place another strain gauge on that dummy material, okay, which is called the dummy gauge. So you see that as the temperature changes, the change in resistance in the dummy gauge as well as the property which change of the substance, both are same and they nullify each other. Okay, I am telling again. Thus, the change in resistance due to temperature change have the same effect on both the active gauge as well as the dummy strain gauge. Hence, the resistance will change equally. Resistance change due to temperature, but the active strain gauge resistance will change due to strain, and there is no strain on the dummy gauge, so there will be no resistance change due to the strain on the dummy gauge. Hence, the temperature effect will have no effect on the final measurement. So the Temperature can also, so this is the way when the temperature is acting as an interfering input, we can use a dummy strain gauge and we can implant the dummy strain gauge on the same material but without any strain, and then we can use these two strain gauge on the Wheatstone bridge, and as a result the temperature effect on the strain gauge can be nullified. Now the temperature effect, temperature can also act. So this is the when the temperature acts as an interfering input. Now the temperature can act as a modifying input. What does it mean? That means it can change the gauge factor also. Okay, but this change of gauge factor with the change of temperature is very small, and we can neglect it very easily. Okay, so the main issue of the temperature is the temperature change and the change in resistance due to the change in temperature. So when the change in resistance due to the change in temperature happens, and it will keep on happening, we use dummy strain gauge to nullify that effect. Dummy strain gauge means same strain gauge we implant on the same material and side by side. So where the temperature change equally affect the dummy strain gauge and active strain gauge. But in dummy strain gauge there is no strain, so the change in resistance due to strain will not occur in dummy strain gauge, but in active strain gauge that will occur. So as a result, the change in resistance due to the change in temperature is nullified, and hence we can use the strain gauge with this help of temperature compensation. Okay, so this is very important consideration. So let me see if you understand or I need to explain again. So do you understand all those things? Okay, as there is nobody is saying anything, so I assume that you understood it, and then we proceed to the next. So next is the semiconductor strain. Okay, so you try to listen very carefully. So till this, yes, any query? Yes.
So can you please explain it again?
Okay. So in dummy strain gauge, what I was telling that when the temperature of the strain gauge changes, it also changes the resistance, and accordingly you will get the output. So you cannot interfere or cannot say this output is due to the temperature change or the change in strain. So when you process this output without any compensation, you will get the wrong strain because the change is due to the change in temperature. So you have to adopt some mechanism so that the temperature effect can be nullified. So do so, we use dummy strain gauge. Dummy strain gauge means similar strain gauge we implant on the same specimen but and side by side, so that temperature changes similarly both the active gauge and the dummy gauge, but the dummy strain gauge is not subject to strain, so it is only subjected to change in temperature. So the change in temperature is same in the both the strain gauge and hence get nullified, whereas the active strain gauge only get the strain and the output is due to strain. So in such a way we can nullify the temperature effect, or we can compensate the temperature, or we can nullify the output due to the change in temperature. Is it fine?
Yes, understood. Thank you, sir.
So now let's move to the next, which is the semiconductor strain gauge. Okay, so now let's recall your first slide where I gave some homework. I said that dr by r by dl by l will be equals to 1 plus 2 gamma plus something, which I said that you can neglect it as the resistivity of the metal is not going to change with the strain. So you can neglect it and our expression becomes 1 plus 2 gamma, and gamma can range between 0 to zero point 0.5. So our gauge factor becomes 1 plus 2 into zero point 0.5 around 2. That was the argument. Now let's come to the point where we will not neglect the change in resistivity due to the change in strain, and that is called the semiconductor strain gauge. Okay, so these type of strain gauge are made up by silicon and from the silicon crystal and with available with N or P type. Okay. So, and what happens when you apply the strain for a P type strain gauge, it increases the resistance with the applied strain because the change in resistivity. So when you apply the strain, the change in resistivity occurs, and in P type semiconductor strain gauge, resistance increases with the applied strain. For N type semiconductor strain gauge, the resistance decreases with the applied strain. So now, what is the advantage of the semiconductor strain gauge? We have the very good strain gauge which we apply regular basis. Now, why we are exploring semiconductor strain gauge? The main advantage is the gauge factor is very high. That very high means it is around 150. So now in metal strain gauge where resistivity change in resistivity is not there, so gauge factor is around 2. But in semiconductor strain gauge, the gauge factor is around 150. What does it mean? High gauge factor? High gauge factor means for a same strain, the change in resistance of a metal strain gauge is very low, but the change in resistance of semiconductor strain gauge is very high, quite 75 times higher. So the sensitivity will be very high for such type of strain gauge. We can measure very small amount of strain and we can measure the amount of strain with great accuracy. So the people are exploring with the semiconductor strain gauge. Okay. So why? So again, I am repeating why the gauge factor is high. The gauge factor is high because the semiconductor material shows the piezoresistive effect. That means with the application of strain, the resistivity of the semiconductor changes, and that leads to a very high gauge factor, nearly 150. And with the very high gauge factor, the sensitivity, very high gauge factor, the sensitivity will be high. Small change of strain can be measured with great accuracy. Okay, compared to metal strain gauge. Now, but in lab, so these are the advantages. But in lab, still you will see the metal strain gauge, right? Which sensitivity is low, gauge factor is low. You might be wondering that because of the money or something issue, we are not buying the semiconductor strain gauge. That is not the case. Although the gauge factor is very high in semiconductor strain gauge, but the high gauge factor accompanied with high temperature sensitivity, nonlinearity, and mounting difficulty. So there are three major difficulties in semiconductor strain gauge. Although it is a very high gauge factor, but it becomes nonlinear, highly temperature sensitive, and there is some mounting difficulty. So because of these three, the solution of these three problems exist, but they are also difficult in real life problem, and routine stress analysis may be useful when you are going to a very specific thing, very specific arrangement, very state of art measurement. But for routine analysis, although the solution of these three problems, high temperature sensitivity, nonlinearity, and mounting difficulty, and then if these three problems are measured, you have to have solution of these three problems, and then you have to mount it properly with the nonlinearity you have to solve, and then temperature sensitivity you have to nullify. It is possible, but for routine day to life, day to day, everyday strain analysis, it is not very popular because it is difficult to compensate all those things in very easy way. So in routine daily life, we use the metal strain gauge. It is very popular, quite accurate, through which we can know, and people accept it. So although semiconductor strain gauge exists, whose sensitivity is very high because of the piezoresistive effect, which gives very high gauge factor, still due to the problem of high temperature sensitivity, nonlinearity, and mounting difficulties in day-to-day life, metal wire strain gauge is the most popular strain gauge and acceptable strain gauge. Okay. So with this, I want to conclude. I want to say that we complete the strain gauge, which is a very important measuring device. And if you have any query on strain gauge, you can definitely ask. Otherwise, we'll move to a new subsection. or new instrument? Okay, so may I hope that all of you understood this strain gauge quite well, and you read the Doeblin. I am taking the figures and everything from Doeblin. I am giving lecture through Doeblin, so it will be helpful when you read that. You will see that the same things I was telling during the class, and it will be helpful to you. So all of you, please read Doeblin. Doeblin is available online. PDF copy you will get. Books are also very cheap, so there is no problem. So you please keep on reading the Doeblin. Now let's proceed further. So next instrument or next measuring equipment for measurement of displacement, which we are reading in this chapter, will be linear variable differential transformer. Okay, let's see. This is like this. So it is linear variable differential transformer. In brief, we call LVDT. LVDT is very popular instrument like the strain gauge. In lab, if you come, you will see that LVDT, very small LVDT, are available in labs, and it is as popular as the strain gauge. Okay, so it is very likely that you get question in different forum. Tell what is LVDT and all. So please listen carefully. Okay? So the name suggests many things. It was the linear, which will come in later, variable differential transformer. So let's focus on the name, the differential transformer. So sometimes many students says, what is LVDT? Linear variable differential transducer. Wrong. It is not transducer. It is differential transformer. Okay, please keep in mind. So if you say that the LVDT, which is the differential transformer, what does it mean? It means that differential transformer means it has the two transformer, and so here you can see. So in the left hand side you can see that the arrangement. What you can see from the outside, you have the four input output terminals. Among them, two input whose voltage is EEX, and sorry, one single input whose voltage is EEX, and two output E01, E02. Okay, because inside there is a transformer which has the single primary coil whose input is EEX, and which has two secondary coils whose output is E01 and E02, and this single primary coil and two secondary coils consist of creates the LVDT. Now with the LVDT, what is the input? Input is the displacement. What is the output? Output is the voltage. So displacement, we want to measure the displacement of something, displacement of shaft, displacement of something. So where we want to apply? We apply the displacement here on the rod. And what is the rod? Rod is the of the core of the differential transformer. Okay. So again, I am coming. So first, when you see some instrument, you will see that is input. Input is the XI. That means the displacement, and it is applied on the shaft of a transformer which has a single primary coil and two secondary coils. So excitation voltage EEX is given to a primary coil, and the output voltage will get from the two secondary coils. As the iron core moves inside the transformer, then the output voltage E01 and E02 changes. We take the difference of the output voltage, and that output voltage becomes at some region linearly proportional to the displacement. So by measuring that output voltage, we can measure the displacement. That is the main principle. Now, if you see the right hand side figure, you have the this is a similar of the transformer. So if you see that you have a core and you have a one primary coil and you have two secondary coils, this is all about it. Now here if you see, so here again I am trying to explain. So we have a, so now this, all the casing and everything is wiped out. Then you see that we have a transformer whose there is a single primary coil whose excitation is EX, and which has a two secondary coils whose output is E01 and E02, and we have a core, and core is attached with the shaft which is attached with the displacement which you want to measure. Now, when the shaft displacement shaft is displaced and this core is also displaced. If the core is displaced, this amount of voltage induced to the two secondary coils will be displayed. And based on that displacement, if we measure these two output or the differential of these two output, we can calculate, we can relate that output with the displacement of core, which is the of displacement which you want to measure. Okay. Now suppose if the core is at null position, one example I'm giving, if core is at null position, what will happen? Now let me see if you understood at this point, up to this point. I'm trying to give you first the uh, overview, then we'll go to maths detail and everything. Okay. Okay. Hopefully you are getting it. So now if you see that, suppose the core is at the null position, that means that equally voltage is induced on the E01 first secondary coil. You see that EX is the primary coil voltage and the first secondary coil E01 is some voltage, and as the core is at null position, the E02 will be the same voltage induced on the second secondary coil. So now if you take the difference of this voltage, what you will be getting? You will be getting the zero as output. That means when the output is zero, the pole is at the null point. That means the displacement is at the 0 point. There is no displacement. Now let's go. Now suppose there is some displacement on the upward. So the core is moved towards the E01. That means first secondary coil. So if the core is moved towards the first secondary coil, the more voltage will be induced on the first. You see that if EX is like this, you will get the core above null. This will be E0. So you will get more voltage. So if core is at null point, you will get zero voltage. If core is at above, you will get definitely a sinusoidal, but there will be a phase difference, okay, which is leading. And when is the below, you see the phase difference, okay, which is lagging. So based on the voltage and the phase difference measurement, you can measure the displacement which is given on the shaft. So this is the full structure. So here this is one. So xi, that means the input displacement versus the E0, how you will get? You will get, suppose xi is the positive and more the xi, the E0 will be more, and you see the phase difference. Okay, phase difference at 0 will be the 180 degree, and then you see in this region it will act as a linear range. So you can use to measure the xi up to this region where the output E0 mod will be the linearly proportional with the displacement xi. Okay. And based on the phase, you can predict whether it is on the forward direction or it is on the backward direction. So when we do all the calculation, mathematical calculation, everything will be clear. Now I am trying to explain it with the physical and verbal reasoning. Mathematics will come from the next slide. So let me explain it once more if you could not get it. So the instrument with which we are trying to measure the displacement and which is very, very popular is called the linear variable differential transformer. So LVDT. So if it is a linear variable differential transformer, it has a single primary coil and two secondary coils, and there is a shaft. The measurement, which is a displacement word, is applied to the shaft. So shaft can move upward and downward, and based on that we will get the output voltage and the phase of it. So if we measure the output voltage and phase of it, we can say that how much displacement happens and what is the direction. It is the forward direction or it is the above null, that means above zero, or below zero, negative direction. So again, if I say that, so to summarize, that LVDT is a primarily used for displacement measurement. Hopefully all of you agree. And it has a primary coil whose excitation is obviously a sinusoidal. Generally, LVDT is a low current device, so the excitation is in the range of 3 to 15 volt, not more than that. It is a sinusoid wave. Frequency is generally kept in between 50 to 20,000 hertz, 50 to 20 kilohertz. Okay, this is the frequency generally we take for the excitation of the primary. Now, as I did explain, there are two secondary coils, right? E01 is the output of the first secondary coil, E02 is the output of the second secondary coil. And so a voltage is induced in the secondary coil due to the effect of transformer, due to the principle of transformer, and the amplitude which is induced on the secondary coil varies with the position of the core, because if the core position changes, the induced voltage also changes, and induced voltage, or more specifically the amplitude of the induced voltage in the secondary coil, varies with the position of the core, which can move in the forward and backward direction with the input displacement. So, based by measuring the differential of the two secondary voltage, we can measure the xi, which is the displacement or the measuring. Okay. So, if you see that, then I will come to this one. If you see that core above null is this, core below null is this. So you see that the E0 is a linear function of core position. Okay, that is fine. But there is a phase shift with the below null and above null. Why? We will definitely discuss it later. Hmm. So now hopefully the principle of operation is clear, and we will go to mathematical derivation. Now tell me if you have any doubt up to this point. Okay. So if you have no doubt, so we can proceed. You can also say that yes, I understood. That will be um, good for me to see that you people are getting it. Now, if you proceed further, this one. Now let's take. Okay, I want to make it. Open. And now we are trying to go to. We are trying to go to the mathematical derivation. Before that, we will see what is basically going to happen. So see, this is the arrangement. Oh, again, wait, just something I want to bring it forward, bring to front. Oh, still it is not. Bring back. Now, hopefully it is working. Now you see. Now you see the figure 4.18, which is from Bernoulli. You see that we have a primary where the excitation is EX, and we know that primary is a coil, so it might have some resistance which we consider as RP, and primary coil has some inductance also as it is a coil. So let's say it is the inductance is LP. Okay. Now see that there are uh, two secondary coils, right? So secondary coils also must be having uh, the inductance. So we consider the inductance is Ls by 2. Ls, we can consider Ls and Ls both, but if we consider Ls by 2, the mathematical expression will be a little bit less complicated. So we consider the two identical secondary coils whose inductance is Ls by 2 and Ls by 2, and also we consider its resistance, which is Rs by 2 and Rs by 2. We consider the mutual inductance, which is not M in both the cases. You please note it. Mutual inductance in one case will be M1, because based on the core position. When the core position is at the middle, it might be same, but it may not be in middle always. So the mutual inductance for the core 1 will be M1, and mutual inductance for core 2 will be M2. And as you know that some excitation voltage is present in the primary, so there will be some induced voltage on the secondary. So ES1 is the induced voltage in the first secondary coil, ES2 is the induced voltage at the second secondary coil, and there is some voltmeter or the voltage measuring device whose resistance is Rm, And at the start with, we consider that this Rm is infinity, so there is no load current Is is flowing through it. Only the voltage, whatever is induced, E0, you see the E0 is the difference of the voltage as we have connected. So we can measure the E0 without any loading effect. So this is the consideration. So hopefully you understood this thing. So there is a primary, there are two secondaries. There is primary excitation whose voltage is kind 3 to 15 volt, frequency could be 50 to 20 kilohertz, and it has some resistance which we consider Rp. It has some inductance which we consider Lp. Some current will flow through it, which is Ip. There will be the two secondaries. So based on the shaft position, voltage will be induced. M1 is the mutual inductance for the first secondary coil. M2 is the mutual inductance for the second secondary coil. ES1 is the voltage induced in the first secondary coil. ES2 is the voltage induced on the second secondary coil. E0 is the difference of these two voltages. And we measure the E0 with a perfect voltmeter. That means it has infinite resistance. We did not consider the loading effect to begin with. We have the infinite resistance Rm associated with the voltmeter. So with this consideration, we can proceed and we can find out some mathematical expression through which we can explain the difference in phase. We can explain the output voltage, which will be proportional to the input displacement, which is given to the shaft. Okay. So hope you understood the circuit and different points of the circuit. Okay. So there is no query as such. Okay. So today let's end here. Tomorrow we'll proceed and we'll do in detail the mathematical expression, how it is coming. First, we will consider that Rm is infinity. There is no loading effect. Meter is perfect. Then we'll consider meter has finite resistance. There is loading effect. Some current will pass. Then what is going to happen? Everything we'll discuss. Then we'll discuss its frequency response, how we can measure with the LVDT. There are a few issues, and then we'll discuss it on the next day, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow 9 to 10, there will be class, and tomorrow is not holiday, day after tomorrow is the holiday, so tomorrow 9 to 10 is the class. So today we can end here, so I stop sharing. So thank you for coming to the class, and hope you are enjoying the class. Also the attendance although is very less anyway. So let's end here, and thank you for coming the class. Have a good day. Thank you all of you.